Welcome to Breaking with Sports, and on this Monday, I want to discuss a few of the news stories that are out. I didn't really do much of the news last week because it was Thanksgiving and everything, and I did not want to really worry about it. So now that it's a new week, there may be a news video every day or so. There may even be a couple news videos just because when I make the first one, I tend to want to make it. It seems like all the news breaks or later in the day, and so I don't ever get to it. But let's just get into the few of the news stories that are out, and one of them is not a news story. I just wanted to go through the NFL standings later on in the video. So the first news story is Mike McCarthy will be out Sunday against the Saints because of COVID issues. Obviously, hope he's all right. I think either Dan Quinn or Kellen Moore will probably act as the head coach. Now, the way that the Cowboys seem to have their team structured, it feels like they're setting up Kellen Moore to become the next head coach of that team, so I don't know why they wouldn't give it to him, but there's also people saying since Dan Quinn does have experience and it's a one-game thing, give the nod to Dan Quinn to be the head coach for this game, which, I mean, either one kind of makes sense, but, I mean, if you're going to, have Kellen Moore become the next head coach of the Cowboys eventually, just give him the reins and let him do this. The next news story. I don't talk much of any other sport on this channel. Now, I really want to expand out and, possibly talk more sports, especially college football, because college football is awesome. I love college football. So I wanted to discuss this one, and it felt like a huge news story, not just for football, not just for college football, not just for football. It felt like a huge news story for sports, and that was Lincoln Riley is leaving Oklahoma to go to USC. Right when this happened, they had a whole bunch of recruits decommit to Oklahoma, which completely makes sense because, Oklahoma just felt like it went backwards completely in one day after Lincoln Riley decided to leave. Now, I'm of the opinion that he just completely bailed on Oklahoma because they're about to join the SEC and he doesn't want to go through that gauntlet every single year. Nick Saban, Georgia, all those guys. So that's my opinion on why he left. I don't really like the move. I really don't. Because if you want to prove that you're a good head coach, why don't you stay at a place that's about to go to the best conference in college football and show your worth, show how good you are? I mean, I guess it does make sense in a way to go to USC because it's the biggest school on the West Coast. It's the biggest brand in college football on that side, which hasn't been relevant for a long time. So it kind of makes sense to go there because if he can revitalize that area of college football that, hasn't, like I said, it's been dead feels like forever. Most people don't talk about USC anymore. It's the Big Ten and SEC that it feels like people talk about the most. And then, they only talk about Oklahoma and Texas from the Big 12. But I mean, as just my first thought when this news broke, I'm just like, well, he's leaving because he's scared the SEC. That was my very first thought. It really, really was. I was just like, well, he's bailing because Oklahoma's about to join the SEC, which kind of bailed on the Big Ten in a way. I'm not into the ins and outs of college football like I am the NFL. The structure is completely different. The sport's fun. I love college football. There's things about college football that are so much better than the NFL, but it just felt like he bailed on OU, went to USC because he's really afraid of the SEC, which, I mean, who wouldn't be? But again, if you want to prove how good of a head coach you are in college football in these ranks, you kind of have to beat guys like Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, all those guys in the SEC. So, I mean, some people are saying there's going to be a lot of kids that committed to other schools, not just Oklahoma, not just to USC. But they said that they feel like there's going to be a lot of kids that are going to decommit from other schools and commit to USC now that Lincoln Riley's over there and the USC brand and, college football team is going to be very relevant for a really, really long time, which is actually going to be nice because when I was younger, watching Pac-12 after dark was always one of the funnest things you could ever do. Because when you don't live on the West Coast, it's really, really late at night when these games kick off, like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night when these games are kicking off, and they're always fun to watch, late at night. Oregon, I was always a fan of them. It's simply because of their jerseys. I've always loved Oregon, watching them late, but the Pac-12 after dark was always fun to watch. And it's going to be cool to see that there's another relevant, it's not really a relevant conference because the Pac-12 has been, not very good in the playoff era. I don't know. I don't keep up with college football as much as like I said, but I think it was Oregon's probably been the best team from the Pac-12 since the college football playoff committee, the CFP came around. But it's always been SEC, Big Ten. But now it's going to be really fun to watch some Pac-12 football again because it's because after the games are over, at the 7 o'clock slot, the 8 Eastern slot. There's really not much reason to watch any of the games afterwards. So watching USC is going to be a lot of fun, I think, again. And then this one's not really a news story. The last thing I want to discuss is the NFL standings, because I think it's somewhat starting to take shape of how it's going to go. But I still think there's a lot of teams in a lot of areas that I feel like it's going to be completely wide open still, because there's a couple teams that are below 500 in the NFC that might make it into the playoffs. So if we're looking at the AFC, I'm kind of going to make some predictions here, but I also just want to discuss it. The Patriots, I feel like at this point are probably going to win their division, because the Patriots, the rest of their season, they play the Bills twice, the Colts, Jaguars, Dolphins. They'll probably win 3 of those 5 games, more than likely. I couldn't imagine them losing any more. They might even beat Buffalo once, so they'll win 4 of those 5 games. So I think they probably have that one locked up. Baltimore, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, that division, I think you can kind of count out Cleveland and Pittsburgh from even winning that division. I think it's going to come down to Cincinnati and Baltimore, which Baltimore does have a pretty tough schedule still coming ahead. They play Green Bay, they play the Rams, they play the Steelers twice still, which, the Steelers have been pretty bad, but they still have those divisional matchups against the Bengals and the Browns as well. So that's going to be a little bit of a struggle. Now the Bengals, they have a gauntlet left, I think. They have the Ravens, Chiefs, 49ers, Chargers, Broncos, and Browns all remaining still. So that's going to be a really, really tough area for them. But I mean, if the Bengals, they've shown promise, they've been good, but they have a chance to maybe win their division, but I still think Baltimore might be the one to win their division. Tennessee, I don't know if they're going to win their division, because with all the injuries, it's finally catching up to them, and they're not playing very well. They do have the weakest schedule remaining. Their big games are really against the 49ers and Steelers, but they get the Texans, Jags, Dolphins. Now the Dolphins game, I think, is going to be one that they may get trapped, and so they'll probably beat the Jags, Texans, but they'll probably lose to the Dolphins, maybe the 49ers, and depending on how the Steelers are, the Steelers. With the Colts, they do have an outside chance. They still play the Texans, Jags. The Raiders are kind of free-falling right now. They do play the Patriots and the Cardinals, which those two you can chalk up as losses. So that part of that division still kind of tight. The Chiefs, I really do think they're going to win the AFC West. All these teams are above 500, but the Chargers, they're so inconsistent. Broncos, I really don't think are very good, and the Raiders' season is completely free-falling. The Chiefs' remaining schedule, I mean, it is for them a gauntlet too. They play the Bengals, Chargers, the Broncos twice, still play the Raiders again, and the Steelers. So their schedule's not easy. But I just think, if the Chiefs' defense has gotten hot, the offense has, shown more potential recently, playing a lot better than they did early on in the season. So I think the Chiefs can probably chalk up that division. If you look at the NFC East, I think the Cowboys have that. Don't even really need to look at that. The rest of that team, the division's bad. I think the Packers by far are going to win their division. Tampa Bay is going to win their division. The Falcons, Saints, Panthers are all really bad. The Cardinals are probably going to win their division, and there's a good chance that the 49ers are going to leapfrog the Rams in their division, because the Rams have been playing pretty bad recently, and they still have the Cardinals, Ravens, 49ers. They do play the Jags, Seahawks, Vikings still, which realistically they could lose 4 of those games. They could probably lose the Cardinals, Ravens, 49ers, and Vikings, even though the Vikings are one of the most annoying teams to try to watch, along with the Colts. But I mean, if you look at the 49ers, they could leapfrog them. They play the Texans, Seahawks, Falcons, do play the Bengals. That could be a tight matchup. They do play the Rams, which I still think, because they beat them earlier this year convincingly, I think it'll happen again, and they play the Titans. So the chances of the 49ers winning out are there, so they could probably leapfrog them and their division, make the playoffs. But yeah, the standings, I mean, they're starting to take shape, but it's still going to be kind of tough. If you look at the AFC, the ones that'll probably make it, you have the Patriots, Bills, the Ravens, Bengals will probably make it, the Titans, the Chiefs, and there's going to be one more team that makes it. That could be down probably, I don't know, the Chargers will probably get that spot, or the Colts. The Colts might be the one to get that last spot. In the NFC, you have the Cowboys, Packers that'll make it, Buccaneers, Cardinals. That's those 4. The other teams that'll probably make it will be the Rams, 49ers, and probably the Vikings or the Eagles. But, I mean, if you look at the way that the NFC is shaping up, the Giants are still a game back, or only a game back from the last wildcard spot. So the standings are completely wide open right now. So really anybody can make the playoffs, it feels like. The teams that are obviously out, Jets are out. Texans, Jaguars, Eagles, Washington. Like I said, I just mentioned the Giants, but I don't think they're going to really be able to do much and get into that playoff picture. I mean, Bears, Lions, they're probably done. Falcons, Saints, Panthers, don't really see them. I thought the Panthers could sneak their way in with the signing of Cam. That's turned out to be pretty bad. Seahawks, I think, are out. So the conferences are kind of starting to take shape right now, but still got, 6-7 weeks to go. Really excited. And yeah, those were the news stories and the standings that I wanted to read out on this football Monday. And we do have Monday Night Football tonight between the Seahawks and Washington. I have Washington winning that game. The Seahawks have been pretty bad recently, and Washington's just a fairly average team. They're not really I think they're maybe a game better than what their record shows, but they're not very good. Taylor Heineke does have some really sweet moments. Seahawks, pretty bad. And so I think the Washington will win that game. Those are the news stories and the standings that I wanted to read out today. Give me your thoughts down below of what you think of these standings, Lincoln Riley. And yeah, that's the news stories that I have. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you in the next one.